Hello and welcome to my live stream. Let me just check if we have some issues. If you can't hear me or anything, or if you see anything going on that's like technical problems, go ahead and send me a message and I'll have a look at it and resolve it. So today I am going to talk about how I evaluate different third parties. All looks good. Awesome. So how I evaluate third party APIs and see if they're a good choice to go with. In this particular instance, I have a client that wants to integrate credit card processing into their mobile app. And we had previously tried another product, but then we ran into a technical issue, which was a bit of a curveball. We didn't know until the company said, yeah, we don't support mobile web browsers. So we had to look for a second solution. And so the merchant, if I'm not the payment provider was like, okay, go with this product. And I evaluated it and noticed there was something off. So I got in touch with them and said, here's the problem. I don't think this is going to work out. They took it back to their technical team and then they said, yeah, this is a problem. We're not going to be able to help you. So now we're on our third product that I'm evaluating. And this is what I'm going to show today. In particular, I'm going to talk about what general things I'm looking for. And like I mentioned, what general things I'm looking for. And this is kind of like basic knowledge that I use across choosing many different types of technologies, whether it's like, should we use this technology versus that one? Should we use this database versus that one? Should we use this product versus that one? All of these technical decisions, I have like a general basic foundation. So let me switch over to my desktop. And I need to bring up my little streaming window to make sure that I am seeing this all the time. Okay, I think I'll just leave that alone for now. So what we're looking at here is a provider, a credit card payments provider, and there's two parts of it. There's the part that actually takes the credit card information and then it gives us back like what they call a token, which is an anonymized and temporary version of the credit card number. It's not the actual credit card number. It's a temporary random number that we use to charge the card. And that's there for security reasons, because if there's a bad actor, there's a bad person, and they have this token, it could be easily revoked, so they can't use it anymore. It's not long lived. It doesn't live for a long time. Whereas if the bad actor gets a hold of the credit card, yeah, that's a bigger issue, right? Because now you have to cancel your credit card and then probably do, it all depends, maybe even do a freeze and everything on your credit. So it's a big of an issue. But credit card payment processors have limited the risk by giving you this option of giving you a randomized version of the credit card number. So this one is called Payment Mate. And just to show you that I'm just brain dumping at the moment because I've only roughly looked at it. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to run into. But in general, I'm looking for a couple things. One, my first question is going to be, do I get back a token? In other words, if I send them the credit card information, do they give me back a token? I want to know how that works. Why is this important? Because one of the issues with taking credit cards is PCI compliance. And with PCI compliance, what that means is that MasterCard, the company MasterCard and Visa, will hold you accountable on how you handle your customers' credit card information. So like, let's say because you implemented a custom payments program, you didn't implement it the right way. Now the credit card numbers from your customers got stolen. Now you're in big trouble because MasterCard and Visa will go after you. And they'll even do it before anything happens sometimes. Like if they find that you're not compliant, like for instance, you're storing credit card information on your servers insecurely and you're not even like reporting it to them, they can charge you up to, let's say, $100,000 a year. Let me see. Yeah, it's like $100,000 a year. I'm sorry, a month. If you're processing a lot of credit cards, and that's a lot. And even if you're like a smaller, hello for those who have joined, even if you're like a smaller business, you can be fined too. So like for instance, if you're doing like 20,000 card transactions a year, which is even possible if you're a small business, you can get charged $5,000 per month in fines because you're not PCI compliant. So it is really important that any business that's taking credit cards online is PCI compliant. So if I would step back and think of, let's like remove credit cards out of the picture, and I'm evaluating this technical solution. My first question is going to be, am I exposing my customer to more risk because of the choice that I'm making? It doesn't matter if it's a product or it's a technical implementation, I ask myself that question. Am I increasing their risk? Whether it's a security risk or perhaps like I'm going to, make a buggy application and then it'll affect my clients' customers. Maybe they might get pissed off at some point because it's so buggy they can't do what they need to do. That's one of the questions that I ask myself. So now, bringing it back to this credit card processor. So I'm going to check, is it PCI compliant? And to what extent? I know a lot of programmers and a lot of companies that say, like for instance, we use SSL, so we take credit cards securely, so we're doing things right. But then at the same time, and they say, we're not storing the credit card information on our servers, so we're good. But at the same time, they're taking the credit card and then allowing it to pass through their server. And for PCI compliance, that's not a good thing. Like, you already, you have exposed yourself. You have a greater security risk if you are transferring or allowing the credit card information to pass right through your server, even if you're not storing it anywhere. You're not storing it in a database or anywhere. It doesn't matter. As long as it passes through your server, now your exposure of PCI requirements has gone up, and now you have to, hey Tristan, how you doing? Good afternoon. And now you have to deal with that. So it's a common misconception, and I think I need to stress it again. Even if you don't store the credit card information on the server, if it passes through, if the credit card information passes through, like literally passes through, it doesn't matter, it passes through your server, you have increased your PCI compliance exposure, which means you have to report more things to them. Sometimes I think you have to do it like quarterly, and you have to give them like a certain amount of like, you have to write a report and stuff. So it's really, really important. Okay. So the way around that, to reduce the risk, is to use tokenization. So I talked about this a little bit with this product that we're looking at right now, and even Stripe does it. I believe PayPal has a couple products that does it. But in general, tokenization is what you want to lower that risk for your client. So now I'm just going to look for that. In general, let's say right here, it says use of a Tempest Technologies P2PE solution does not remove you from the scope of your own PCI DSS requirements. What our solution provides is a reduction of scope by removing the systems and networks involved in card data capture and communication, utilizing our solution. The PCI SSC has recognized and validated PCI P2P solutions meet the necessary requirements to reduce your scope. If you capture cardholder data using other methods outside of the offered solution, the systems and environments utilized by these secondary POIs are fully within scope and are solely your responsibility. So you see right here, it says, if you go outside of our solution, because we're already giving you something that's less risk, less scope, less PCS scope, you go outside of that, it's your responsibility. So that's why it's really important the way that developers implement things, because in the end it could affect their clients. So I'm always thinking about that. I'm going to bring more problems to my client because of the way that I am implementing this. So it's really important. And I'm not like a PCI expert, but I know enough to know that you need to be cognizant of how you handle the credit card information. If you're storing it, man, you have to really know what you're doing. And for the most part, it's a lot better to use a product where you don't have to worry about storing that, like Stripe or anything similar to that. Okay, so the next thing I am going to look for is, with the current technical solution, where I'm at, let's say, like what technology I'm using right now. Is it going to be a problem with integration? Am I going to have integration problems? Like, is it going to be hard to implement? Or perhaps is it going to be buggy for some reason? So that's kind of hard to figure out in the beginning, because you have to weigh what you have now, take what you're going to use, and then look for the middle parts that are missing. You have to fill in that gap. So in my instance, I am using an Ionic app, and I know for a fact that it uses a browser inside of an application. So I know that. So I can kind of use my knowledge as a web browser and apply that to how I'm going to evaluate if there's going to be issues in the beginning of integrating this, and whether or not we should even integrate it because there's going to be issues. Another thing that I know is, like, for instance, I was working on implementing this other product, and it was using iframes. Excuse me. It was using iframes for communicating to the third-party payments processor, so that it could send the credit card data straight to them, not passing through your server. The credit card data goes straight to them, and then you get a token back. So yeah, they were using iframes. Now, because I was using Ionic, there was something very particular of iframes, Ionic, and iOS, that combination. If you've seen the beginning of every URL, there's a scheme that looks like this. You know, you have HTTP, HTTPS. Well, for Ionic and iOS, at least for the version that I'm working on, I haven't used any of the more recent ones, but for that one, it uses a scheme of Ionic like this to host like CSS files and JavaScript on the device itself, so it could serve it almost like a server on your iOS device. And the iframe that was being used in order to send that information, the credit card information, to the credit card processor, was rejecting the requests because of this scheme. So the next thing that I was looking for in this second product, well, because this is a third product, remember, the second product I was looking for, are we going to have issues because they are also using iframes? Okay, so I went through the documentation and boom, right there, they were using iframes. So I reported it back to them. And then also I said, okay, so maybe you're using iframes, and if we have an issue, can you patch it quickly? It ended up being that they couldn't help us. So now we're here, and my question is I'm gonna ask myself, are they using iframes? So I'm gonna look for that now. The first thing that I'm looking for is how is this implemented? So I'm going to scroll down here, and I'll remind you again that I don't know too much about how this is implemented. I just want to show you the thought processes that I go through, because this is like the reality of development. Like, I don't know these things, and you won't know these things ahead of time until you actually look into them, and you just have to use your reasoning at the moment. So let's look through here and see. Third party. Okay. What I'm looking for is like developer type documentation. And I don't see anything about, an API endpoint. I don't see anything about JavaScript or tokenization or anything. So I'm going to look for if there's another resource that I should be looking at. So I might try this one right here. Mate. And I want to make sure that I'm looking at the implementation guide. And here's another thing. I get a little bit worried when I'm working with a third-party API that doesn't use developer documentation. Like, it doesn't have its own website of developer documentation. And I'll explain what I'm talking about. I'll give you an example, the Stripe API reference. If I go to Stripe's API reference, I get something like this, where I can look at the endpoints and everything and see what my inputs and outputs are. This would be just a response, but anything like this. I look for something like this when I'm evaluating a product. If I don't see this, for instance, if I have to log in and then the documentation is in a PDF, I get a little bit antsy. I don't know. This doesn't sound like it's going down the right path, because I feel, and I've kind of, I don't know, even if documentation can be hard, right, to keep up to date, that the ones that have websites like this are usually more reliable than the ones that have PDFs and stuff like that. I don't know why. Have you guys seen that? I don't know. It's been my experience. But that's if I don't see a website with the API reference, or maybe like a GitHub with the really good readmes and stuff, then I kind of take off some points for that particular product, or to say it's a good one to integrate to. Welcome those that have just entered. So it seems like we're having this issue too. And I'm not liking what I'm seeing so far, but this is what this whole process is, because At the end of the day, I need to report to my client and say, this is what I found, and this is what we need to do or not do. And I've had to have that conversation of saying, this is not a good idea. Like, we shouldn't go down that path, but I'll leave it up to you guys. But, this is my professional opinion. All right, so let's see if I could find some API type documentation. I see app to process, check payments, and I don't think that's what I want. Using payment to process and check with your mobile device. I don't know. That doesn't look right. So let's see here. What's this Windows edition? Quick chip. Yeah. Not sure what that is. Wonder what this is. Nope. Still the same thing. So far, it seems like things aren't looking too good. If this is only 12 pages of a PDF, I'm pretty sure that this is not enough to give me information about the application. I mean, about the API and any, like, let's say, libraries that I'd use to call that API. So right now, this one's like showing me, oh, you use this app that they have, and it doesn't help me because I want to call an API. So yeah, that's not helping me. The only one that would kind of make sense to me is this one that's like 29 pages long, and I've already opened that. And still, I do not see much about the API. Like, how am I supposed to integrate to this? I don't know. And this is making me feel a little bit uncomfortable right now, which probably means that I have to get back with this particular provider on behalf of my client and say, I need more information, guys. Please help me. And at the same time, I'm pulling in my client to give them transparency about what's going on, because I want my client to see what's actually going on. They need to see for themselves that we're trying to get the right solution to them. Okay, so let's see right here. Deployment locations. Yeah. This is a bit sad. What I need right now is like an API to talk to. And what I'm seeing is not that. Payment portals and web services. Comprehensive APIs. Okay. Now this sounds interesting. I think this is probably getting there. Let's see. Integration options. POS integrations, web-based integrations. Okay, now this is getting closer, because remember how I was talking about I want tokenization, because I need to send the credit card directly to that service and they send me a token back. I don't want it to go through my server. So let's see this. Web-based solutions to protect Uh-oh. Protected iframe benefits. Ay. Well, here goes that again. The iframe. Our protected iframes save you money. Blah, blah, blah. All right. So now I already know that that's like one of the main issues. So now I have to go back to not to my client, to this service provider and say, can you guys support web mobile browsers? And if there's a problem with your iframe rejecting our request to you, can you patch that quickly? Because the issue that we've been having with my client is that we were pretty much ready to have this integration with and accepting credit cards. Woo! Like at least a month, maybe a month and a half ago. And we've kind of been getting dragged along to try to figure out how to get this working, because this is out of our hands right now, because we depend on these service providers. If their product does not work with our technology, then we're stuck until our client makes like an executive decision of if we're going to stick with them or we're going to go with something like Stripe, or I don't know. So it's really important right now not have to go back to them and tell them, you guys are using iframes. We've had issues with iframes in the past. Like, give us some direction right now. So let's assume that their iframe works. Now I'm just going to look at like the technical details of that. So one of the things I'm going to look for is, do they have, like in my case, it would be a JavaScript library, so that I can call them without having to write like a whole client library myself and waste a lot of time and introduce bugs. Whereas if I use, their library that they give to me, I don't have to worry about any bugs, or not have to worry about, assuming they have everything working. So I look for things like, do they have a GitHub repo? When was the last time that they updated this library? I might look at the actual library code itself to see, is it like messy or not? Because if it's messy, then it might mean issues down the road. So let's look at that. I'm going to try to look for the actual integration part. So it says something about here, shielded by JavaScript encryption. All right. Request info. Wow, so they're already putting this behind a wall. Like I need that documentation, and they put that documentation behind like a wall, where I have to send them requested information, and then they give me that information. So that's another kind of minus right there. So now that's another thing that I need to request. I need to request the documentation specifically for the JavaScript library, where I can send them the credit card information and they give me the token back. So in general, I mean, this was kind of like a brain dump of how I evaluate products before I integrate them. And you've already seen like the whole thought process of like, what questions am I asking myself, and then the what I look for. I'm hoping that you can kind of do the same thing. You just need to ask yourself, what are the risks of choosing this path? That's pretty much what you have to keep asking yourself. What are the risks of choosing this path? In this particular instance, I noticed that the risk was whoever has joined. The risk was it's using iframes, and we've had issues with iframes. And the other issues is that the documentation isn't readily available on the website. I had to actually reach out to them, which is a con for me, because that documentation isn't open. It makes it difficult for me to just hit the road running, and I have to wait for them. It's a bottleneck. I have to wait for them. And I'm not exactly sure right now what else I'm going to see, because I don't have that documentation. So now when I get the documentation, I have to reevaluate again. I need to ask myself, is this going to be an issue? And just like I mentioned, I have to look at the library code and see if it's worth integrating. And depending on what I land on, if I say yes or if I say no, I report that back to my client. And at that point, I leave it up to them. I have my professional opinion, and